show commenced.
Oh, we're live.
The broadcast is live. So, okay. So hopefully there may be people watching, and if so,
I
hello.
don't know if anybody is there or no, but we are live, and this is my very first live stream, and I'm with Dr. David John Lincoln, who has very graciously accepted the invitation to be here and give us an idea about the work that he does, the phenomenal work that he does. And Dr. David Lincoln is the president of Association of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, ANLP Foundation, India. So, Dr. David, very warm welcome to you. And just as we were talking prior to this live situation, we will be continuing our conversation. And if you get any questions or anything in between from any viewers of ours, we will jump into the
I feel like a bit of a guinea pig being your first person.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's my privilege, my honor to have you here. Absolutely.
Set a standard for others to follow. That's the way.
Thank you so much. Yes, we are trying to set standards in many, many different ways. You're also a part of my WhatsApp group, and that's again my privilege, my honor to have you there. Dr. David, just tell me, first of all, the question that has always been there in my mind to ask you is, why NLP? Why neuro-linguistic programming? What attracted you to this?
Now that's a long story, so I will cut that short. But I first got involved in neuro-linguistic programming over 25 years ago now. And I like to say, probably a little bit sarcastically, that I was dragged kicking and screaming to an NLP program by a current girlfriend, the current girlfriend at that time, not now.
Right.
And I attended the program and I thought, well, it's sort of interesting. There's probably something in this. And the rest, as they say, is history. I was at that time a practicing psychologist, so I had some sort of understanding of how the brain works. And the interesting thing about NLP, let's call it NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, although, of course, the letters NLP have now been hijacked by all sorts of organizations, not the least of which is the natural language program.
Yes.
There's we used to say a non-living person, and loads of others. But basically, NLP is really just looking at what works in the world, people, what works, and seeing if what works for them will work for you. So NLP looks at what works for lots of different people and turns that into a process which we can then teach other people to do, so they don't have to go through all the trial and tribulations of finding out what works. It's already done for you. That's basically how it is. And way back 25 years ago, it seemed to be working.
Well,
so
it's been working all along. I think it's the highest rated behavioral.
So I'm going to say, I'll let you into a little secret, and that is that NLP can not work, because it studies only things that work. And so if you only do things that work, they have to work, in simple words.
Right. You remove the not working portion through NLP. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. We only do things that work.
That work, yes. So it makes it very, very productive.
There's no saying in NLP that goes, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. So if you want something different, you have to do something different. And it's really as simple as that.
True. So as a psychotherapist or psychologist, as a psychologist, you must have done a lot of psychotherapy also.
Yes, of course.
So how do you find that field different or in alignment with NLP?
Well, there is a big difference in the sense that NLP is not psychotherapy and psychotherapy is not NLP. Now, if you are good at the skills of psychotherapy, which are really just the ability to talk to people and get into their world and understand them, then you find that the tools of NLP are very, very practical. The easiest thing, I suppose, the easiest way to compare it is that the NLP tools are very similar to the cognitive behavioral therapy tools. They both have a very similar grounding. In other words, tools that work. And that's why NLP comes quite well with psychology or psychotherapy, because it's all right finding out what's wrong with somebody, but knowing what to do is the hard question. And when you find people that have had the problems in the past and now have resolved them, and you ask them how they did it, you can turn that process into a therapy. And so there's a whole separate part of NLP called NLP psychotherapy. So when you are trained in NLP, you can go on and do a further training, which we run in psychotherapy. So you can pick up the tools of psychotherapy and add them to the tools of your neuro-linguistic programming.
Right, right. But there are a lot of people who are doing certification programs in NLP, and I have also seen, sadly, I don't know how to put it, but there are some course instructors who are running a 3-day course also. And what do you have to say about that?
Well, interesting enough, when we started NLP, when I started doing NLP, the first level, the practitioner level, used to be a 20+ day course that was run over 6 months, normally a long weekend every month for 6 months. But in the early days, there wasn't the technology that we now have. And so the first cut, if you like, was down to 7 days. And that was done by Richard Bandler, one of the founders of NLP. And the 7-day program included home learning, which is in those days CDs and manuals.
Right.
Then when we first came to India, when I first started doing this in India, I used to do a 7-day program. But of course, India philosophy and way of working in India is a lot different than in other countries, European countries. So we had to adjust it to fit the, shall we say, the Indian way of doing things. And that eventually meant we got down to 5 days. Now, 5 days is pretty hard and pretty fast. You have to do a lot of things in 5 days. Now, unfortunately, money grabs the field, so to speak. And a lot of people want to make money out of NLP, and so they do 3 days. I've even seen 2 days. That sometimes they change the wording of the certification. But the fact of the matter is that only a minimum of 5+ days is required for any internationally accepted qualification. Now, we talk about the ANLP in the UK and ANLP in India, and there's an ANLP in Australia, and there's an American board of NLP in America, plus there's international NLP trainers, and so on. There's about 10 internationally accepted organizations, and all of them more or less follow the same pattern and the same instructional course. And for those, each of those organizations will more or less accept each other's certifications. Now, a shorter course of 3 days or 2 days is never backed up with an internationally recognized certification.
All right.
They like to say they are. Oh, yes, this is an international certification. My company, Joe Bloggs International, will give you the certificate, which is fine until they try to use that certificate to go to a higher level or to be recognized by an international body. So, yes, these things happen. And, I'm not that against them, to tell you the honest truth, because if you learn NLP, and once you begin to learn it and begin to understand it, you'll then want to go for an international certification, and then you have to come to one of the standard bodies. I feel sorry for some of the people that have, paid money and got a, I suppose, worthless certificate.
Yes. See, my question was regarding this only, that if people are investing the money in some kind of knowledge, might as well get the knowledge which can help them go further and forward in life.
Well,
Because
this is unfortunately the same in every organization.
yes,
You know,
yes,
if you look at hypnosis, for example, to be able to hypnotize somebody, to put them into trance and take them out of trance, requires just 1 day's training. But to become a hypnotherapist, where you're actually helping people overcome problems, requires a
problems.
lot more training. You
Mhm.
might say the same with aromatherapy. You know, to learn what smells nice in the bedroom and what smells nice in the living room will only take you a few hours or a day. But to be able to adjust the aromatherapy with the certain massage oils and help people with specific ailments takes an awful lot more study.
So
So
very
you
true.
know, it's an unfortunate thing that we just have to live with. I think NLP is one of maybe 10,000 modalities that are in a similar situation throughout the world. Some of which are more well known, and some of which are maybe not so well known. I'm
Yes.
talking about things from candles in your ears to bells on your toes that cure all
And
sorts of ailments.
past life regression is one very important uh, area
Past,
because
yeah, past life regression is something that's somewhat embedded in hypnosis, but it's also totally embedded in your belief system. If you
hmm,
believe in past lives, then you can go to a past life therapist that will help you cure those problems. If you don't believe in past lives, then nobody's going to cure the problems because it doesn't exist for you.
right.
And because there are so many
And
people.
therein comes a very important element of NLP. You
Oh
believe
yeah,
in something, it happens. Yes.
but belief is a very important structure in everybody's life, not just NLP. What you do and the way you conduct your life is by a series of beliefs. And if those beliefs work for you, then great. But if they don't work for you, well, then that's when NLP comes in to help you change or get
Yes.
rid of, as we call them, limiting beliefs. But
Right.
beliefs are also tied in with your values. And values is everything in life you do because of your values and what's important to you and what's important to your family. And the values and the beliefs together make who you are. Most of the time, that's perfect. I suppose the vast majority of people in the world are okay, but some people like to be more okay. And that comes in therapies and modalities of all descriptions to make you more okay. And this is
Right.
not new. This has been around since the year God.
Right.
If you're a swimmer, would you not like to be a better swimmer? And if you want to be a better swimmer, you go to people who are better swimmers to learn how to swim, and so on and such forth through everything. One of the uh, biological factors, you might say, of the human being, the evolutionary process is to get better, to become better and better. That's evolutionary biology, the survival of the fittest. And that's built in every one of us. So all of us are searching for ways to be better. And unfortunately, there's loads of people that offer you ways to be better, most of it with, a carrot and requiring a lot of money. Money tends to make everything better. If you pay enough money, you can become better, whatever that is.
That's one very great way of putting the whole mixture together. I would say that, I mean, all the roads lead to Rome eventually, and the purpose is to become better and better. True.
That's right.
My mentor Bob Proctor, he says better is a good word.
Yes, and then of course you can be better and better in the next life, and when you're in the next life, you can look back in this life and decide how you did it. So even if you don't believe in anything, you could take what's known as the existentialism approach, which is, what's the purpose of life? Doesn't have to be a god or anything like that, but what is the purpose? And that's what we're all looking for, a purpose in life. And it's
Yes,
even more clearer in our current times. What's
very
happening
true.
across the world right now has brought that purpose in life very much into focus.
It has indeed.
The world has been brought to its knees by some microscopic entity, or not even an
Yes,
entity,
just a
microscopic,
molecule.
that is
Just a molecule.
yeah, which is actually challenging everybody's purpose in life. Because if you
Hmm.
don't have the right purpose in life, along comes this bug and kills you. That's
Hmm.
one way of looking at it.
So very true. So very true. Very nicely put. Uh, Dr. David, you've been doing a lot of Facebook live streaming. I've seen your Facebook live streams. I think you do one every day.
Well, I have been. I sort of haven't done them for the past couple of days, mainly because it doesn't seem that people are that interested in it. You know, us trainers, teachers, and all these sort of people are saying, "What a wonderful time! You've got 3 weeks doing nothing. This is the time to improve yourself and learn." But the vast majority of people are not looking at it that way. They're either saying, "Oh, 3 weeks, I'll stay in bed until 11 o'clock every day," and so on, or they're fighting the system and sneaking out and doing things. It's easy for us to say, "Oh, this is a great time," but you tell young children, "You're not at school, but you're still going to work. You'll find what will happen." Oh, no, 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 no. Oh,
I,
no, no, I want to go out and play. But you can
I think this is
learn.
all about resistance to anything that has been imposed upon them.
Oh, yes, yes. And I think it's even more difficult when you're being resistant to a somewhat, shall we say, invisible enemy, that it's very hard for the average person to realize that this is an enemy. We all think we are invincible. We're all supermen and superwomen in our own way. Oh, this bug won't kill me. I'm definitely going to be one of the 80% that it doesn't affect, or only mildly affect. But unfortunately, you could also be one of the 20% that badly affects you, or one of the whatever it is percentage that will actually kill you. And so it is difficult. It's difficult for the average man to understand this. And of course, there's no two ways about it, but politicians are cashing in on this in every country.
In every
Even in India, you've got the ruling party saying X and the opposition saying Y, and then there's a whole bunch of people coming up with conspiracy theories and so on and such forth. And because some of these conspiracy theories and some of these alternative ideas come from what the common man might say as a reasonably intelligent person, they don't know. They're totally confused, utterly confused. I mean, look at the whole business of face masks. Yes, you must have them. No, you mustn't have them. There's even social distancing. You see, I don't know if you watched recently, but Donald Trump was making an announcement, I think only a few hours ago, surrounded by people, definitely closer than 1.5 meters or 1 meter. So how can you say, "Oh, you must have social distancing," when certain rulers of the world are not doing it? And then you look at Sweden, that's done virtually nothing and doesn't have a lot of deaths. India, of course, you've got to say to India, I mean, they don't have a lot of cases. As of the last count, there was 99 deaths. But you've got to weigh that up with deaths. I mean, if you'd probably be absolutely horrified to know how many people die every day in the world. There's an awful lot. Over 1 million people die every day in the world. And of course, over 1 million people are born. At the moment, there are more people being born than dying. So, it is complicated for the common man and woman to really understand what's going on. And they either just have to be blindly obedient to the powers that be, or some people question it. And this is always going to be the case, no matter what it is.
no matter
If you
what
look
it
at
is. Yes.
the history of 1918, when you had the last big pandemic,
Yes.
the
Yes.
Spanish flu, there were
Yes.
people there screaming, "Why are we doing this? Why are you doing this to us?" and so on. So it's always going to be the case.
It's
Um,
always going to be the case. Yes.
you could
Uh,
take it up to a
Dr.
high.
David, tell me, since the anxiety levels are rising so much, uh,
Mm.
as an NLP master practitioner, Tell me, what exactly do you see the future of NLP once all of this subsides? I'm
Okay.
sure there will be a surge in a lot of people seeking NLP and a lot of people wanting to become practitioners also.
Okay, well, I happen to be a master trainer of NLP, but talking about anxiety, let's just look at what anxiety is in its simplest form. It's fear of the future. It's fear of the unknown, and of course, because our current future is unknown, we have an awful lot of anxiety. Because okay, we all know we're in lockdown, but when is the lockdown going to finish, and how is it going to finish, and what's going to happen then? So this whole concept of the illness or the pandemic or the fear surrounding it or whatever is going to take some time to go away. It's not going to just suddenly happen because lockdown's finished. Oh, April the 14th, I think it is here, or 15th.
No.
Lockdown's finished. Everybody go back to as they were, because you can't go back to as you were for a variety of reasons. Now, NLP will be there because it is the study of excellence. It's what can you really learn out of this? How will people change, and how will that new you be able to work in the new world? It's going to be a new world. There's going to be, like we're doing now, there's going to be a lot more of this idea of learning electronically and these sort of meetings that we're having now. There's also going to be a realization that maybe you don't need so many people to do work, because certain things have managed to carry on even with a vast majority of the people staying at home.
Right.
So it's going to be different. There are a lot of it's almost, I was going to say earlier, sort of like chunking it up. It's almost an evolutionary step. We're going to move into a whole new consciousness, a whole new understanding of how things happen in the world. Hopefully, this will be good. Hopefully, we'll move to be closer to people, closer to our friends and family and so on. And certainly, we're going to be opened up to a whole new idea. Now, I'm not going into all the conspiracy theories that tells you all sorts of things, but for certainty, electronic media will take a large jump forward.
Very true.
There will be less work for people in the old way, so people will have to be retrained in the new way of doing things. I mean, if I was a young man again right now, I would say, wow, exciting times. There's lots of ways of making huge new bits of money.
Right.
There's a lot of very simple things. I get very simple sometimes. They talk about lots of money being lost off the stock exchange. The stock exchange has dropped 20%, 30%, or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, if somebody loses money, somebody else makes money.
Right.
The money is there. The money hasn't been burnt in an inferno. It hasn't been dissolved into vats of acid. It's just been redistributed. So some people are less wealthy and some people are more wealthy. And the whole way of doing business, the whole way of understanding will have shifted a gear somewhat. And of course, bringing in NLP, that will have a big part to play in helping people understand how this gear has shifted. So, of course, psychology and psychotherapy, because there will be people that are fallen by the wayside that will need to be picked up and dusted off and put into their new position. Unfortunately, there will be some people that will fall permanently off the wayside. But unfortunately, that's life. That's what evolutionary biology is all about. And it's not as if it's happened for the first time. We can go back in history, right back to the bubonic plague and the big plague in 1665 was it, in England, and the fire of London and so on. So, it is, as we often say, history has a habit of repeating itself, but repeats itself in different words and in different languages and in different ways.
It does. It does.
Neuro-linguistic programming is about understanding the language and the ways. So I think it will have quite a big part to play in the future.
Yes.
Long answer to your question.
That's very that's exactly how it is going to be. Because if we don't evolve mentally, I don't think it is going to happen later on in a physical world. Just as you said about the electronic learning element, of course it is going to be higher. Of course it is going to be better, more evolved, and the people who haven't adapted to it up until now will perhaps have to adapt to it almost overnight. In fact, at my company, we've been working on a solution for the last 1 year, and at that time, nothing of this sort was in sight. But we had a vision. We thought we'll start developing certain tools for specifically for the Indian market because in India, I see slower adaptability to the e-learning areas. We are doing a lot of e-learning work, but most of it that is being created is for the Western world. The way it is coming up in India is specifically from the angle of trainers and coaches. I don't see a lot of people doing a lot of work as it is there in the Western world. So we have come up with a solution. It's almost ready. I'll leave a link in the description of this video. If somebody is interested, they can put in their email ID and we will get back to them shortly once we are ready for a full-blown launch. Right now, we are beta testing the whole thing. We're trying to make it as simple as possible. Not complicated, because I feel complicated things can be understood by just about anybody. You just said this yourself, that simple is something which is difficult to finally grasp. But simplicity is very important.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting byproducts, you might say, of this this current problem is the fact that people are prepared to accept new innovations, which
Yes.
maybe were not prepared to accept a few months ago. And even the general person in the street is now beginning to understand, yes, maybe there is a new form of consciousness going on in the world, and this new form of consciousness may well become an electronic form. Because, in reality, your brain is an electronic machine anyway. And when that starts to connect, I think Elon Musk once said that in the future, learning will be just plugging in. Oh, I want to know Japanese. Hold on. Each and she go, look, I can now speak Japanese. That's what's going to happen.
Kids will be very happy with that kind of thing. They won't have to go through all the schooling process and all.
Yeah. So, there is out of every bad, there is good. I think I'm a great fan of living in the now, being in the now. And, there is reality, which is not necessarily what you see, right or wrong. I teach this. I say that everything you can think about just exists. It's not good or bad. It just exists, including a human. If you think there are 7.25 billion or more, 7.7, I think, billion people in the world now, everyone looks different. Every single person. There's nobody looking like you, and definitely nobody like me, thank goodness. But everybody's different. So if everybody is different, how can you say that somebody is more beautiful than somebody else? You can't. And some of the old ideas that come in, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder and so on, it is so true. But this is not just about people, it's about anything. If I pick up, here's the one I often use. Here, I pick this up and I say to people, what is this? And most people will say, it's a spoon, right? But of course, that is not the correct name for this. Actually, the correct name for this, because it's quite long, it's called a Sunday spoon, as in ice cream sundaes. But in reality, what is it but a piece of metal bent into a certain shape? You can look at this and say, oh, that's horrible, that's useless for anything. Or you can look at it and say, oh, that's good, I can use that, I can scratch my back with it. I can do all sorts of things. But all it actually is a piece of bent metal. And if you look further down, it came from a piece of iron ore, probably even from Goa, because Goa's got a lot of iron ore here. So we make everything something. We make it good, we make it bad. Now, I'm not suggesting that everything bad is good, or vice versa. But the fact of the matter is, we do decide what is right and what is good, and sometimes we forget that, and we just let other people decide what is right and what is
Right.
good.
Absolutely.
And that's what comes with what the advertising industry is all about, is to make sure that they make sure that their goods are the right ones, and everybody
Right.
else's,
Right ones. True.
but
True.
everything else is. So I always recommend Urkel Toyle. You've probably heard of him or seen some of his programs, who's very much about living in the now, because now is the only moment that actually exists.
Yes.
That's
And you have
gone.
to learn it. There are no two ways about it. Everybody has to learn it. Eckhart Tolle is really a phenomenal writer. He's
It's
done such.
one of my gurus, you might say. Um,
Okay.
one of the things that NLP knows, for example, is that the brain can only live in the now. And if you have a problem from the past, it's in the past, but you bring it into the now. As
It's in
soon
the
as you
mind.
think of a problem, you bring it into the now. And the funny thing about it is that you change it. As soon as you bring it into the now, the problem is now 2020's problem. Even though it happened for you in 1990, you've now brought it into 2020. So it'll carry on for another 10 years. So one of the things we can do in NLP is cure the problem in the now, fix it. And then when it goes back into the past, it goes back as a fixed problem, not
Yes.
as a continuous problem. And the
Right.
same thing happens, of course, about the future, because any problem in the future is called anxiety. And once you've done it, you can't have the anxiety over it. So
Right.
all
Right.
problems
Right.
exist either in the past or in the future. No problem exists right now.
Right.
It
Right.
can't do, it never
Right.
has.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. That's very powerful, Dr. David. Dr. David, just tell us about what this organization ANLP is all about, and what does ANLP India Foundation stand for?
Okay, well, ANLP is, as I said earlier, is the governing body for NLP in India, or one of the governing bodies, because there are others. And its job is to make sure that the teaching of NLP by trainers is taught to a basic standard level. If you like, if you can put it to education, um, in India, I think you have to pass certain years, don't you? So I think is it a 10th standard as you can leave once you pass that. But who decides what is the 10th standard? There is a body that says this. If you do all this, you can pass the 10th standard.
Right.
ANLP is a body that says if you teach these subjects to this level, you can then say to that person, you are now a certified practitioner of NLP. And then the next level, the certified master practitioner of NLP, and then the trainer of NLP, and finally the master trainer of NLP.
Yes.
Now,
And I have to apologize. I wrongly said master practitioner at that time. It's master trainer. Sorry
yeah.
for that.
So everywhere in the world, these organizations are like, for example, NLP and hypnosis and everything else you can think of are self-governing organizations. They have their own bodies that govern them. And this has always been the case. And in fact, a few years back in England, they put a royal commission to study all the complementary and alternative medical systems.
Okay.
And NLP comes under an alternative system in this regard. And there are tens of thousands of these. And so they brought this body in, along with the European Union, to see if they should actually put some authority behind some of these various things. And after 3 years of study, they gave up. And in the end, what they did is two things. One is they licensed anything that evaded the body. So acupuncture, for example, with little needles, that had to be licensed because it invades the body. But traditional Chinese medicine, of which acupuncture is a tiny part of, was not licensed. And the other thing they did is they reserved the name psychologist for somebody who had formal university education. The rest of it is left exactly as it is. So anybody, literally anybody, can put a brass plate outside the house and call themselves any of the 10,000 odd different things that are floating around in the world, from hypnosis to massage therapy to ear handling. And I'm not going to say any more, but I might upset people. But everything you can think of, none of it requires any government-approved qualification. So all of these different modalities have their own governing bodies. Some of them have hundreds of governing bodies. Hypnosis, for example, I know has probably a few hundred governing bodies around the world. And some of these governing bodies are bigger than others. NLP is just the same. One of the main, well, there is two or three of the original, one of the original governing bodies was called the Society of NLP, which was originally done by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. And then they had a bit of a problem, a falling out, and then other people had a falling out. So there's now two or three different societies of NLPs. Then there's the American Board of NLPs, the International NLP Trainers Association, and then, of course, the various ANLPs in various different countries, all of which play a part because, nobody could govern them all. I tell you, another example is coaching. Another example is coaching is very much part of NLP. There are literally hundreds of international coaching organizations. The most well-known one in India is the International Coaching Federation, or the ICF, which I am a member as well. And they've sort of got a bit of a stranglehold in India, but they're only governing bodies. They don't teach. ICF has its headquarters somewhere in America, don't teach you to be a coach. They say, oh, that person knows how to teach you to be a coach, so we'll qualify that person. But ANLP is like that. ANLP is not a teaching body for NLP. It's a body that says, oh, that person's a good teacher. He can teach. This person can teach. That person can teach. So I have my own company, which is ANLP India, or NLP India rather, or Go NLP. We have a few different names. And we actually issue certificates on behalf of ANLP India, that governing body. And the NLP India is governed by the master trainers that are recognized to it, and no changes to their constitution can be made without all the current master trainers agree. So it's very much a self-controlling, self-governing body.
Okay, and ANLP India is perhaps one of the biggest in the world.
Well, it could be. I mean, nobody declares their numbers, so we don't know. But it depends on how you call biggest. If it's biggest by numbers, then it certainly is or will be the biggest because of the numbers in India are huge. But if it's biggest by more well-known, it's probably third or fourth in line of the most well-known bodies throughout the world. But it's still, it's there in a major part of NLP.
Right.
And it's been going.
That's what counts. I feel that's what counts, because that's the most important thing.
Yes, that's true. But you asked earlier about seeing 3-day certificates and so on. Well, in the early days, I was the first one to do 5 days, and we had a lot of arguments over that. And my argument is quite simple. I said, I know people that have studied NLP for 30 days, 40 days, or 50 days, and still can't do it.
Right.
I've known people that studied for 5 days and been fantastic at it. So whatever the subject is, it's not so important of how long you learnt it for, or who you learnt it with, or which organization you belong to, or anything else. What's important is, can you do it? Now, if you can do it, you'll survive in life. If you are a great coach and you are making great successes with people, you will be successful, because success breeds success. But if you're useless at doing something, then you won't do it. I mean, it's in every profession. Every profession. I know.
End of the day is the results that you produce that matter. Absolutely. And your own clients are your best judges, your best uh,
Exactly.
approvers or certificate givers. Your
So
testimonials, ones that you get, they
the good will
find
always survive. The good will always survive. There will always be a few bad that are struggling to make a living. And between the two, there'll be a lot of crooks that will
right.
make money out of it as well. So it's your job to distinguish those two. I mean, it's exactly the same as a medical doctor. There are some medical doctors I wouldn't give the time of day for. And there are others that I would actually travel hundreds of miles to get treated because I trust them and I know them and I know they have, they have good success. And that's
Yes, they
not
can
difficult.
deliver. Yeah, they can deliver the results. Absolutely, absolutely.
You have a car, you probably have a motor mechanic that looks after your car.
Yeah,
And there may be
yeah,
hundreds of motor mechanics and some with, qualifications down their arm, but you wouldn't trust them with your car.
absolutely.
So it's the same in
Absolutely.
every field. Every
It,
field that's the same.
yes, yes,
It's
yes,
what you
absolutely.
can do.
So, see, Dr. David, and you run a lot of courses over there, and a lot of people come and get trained over there. Now, when you take your practice to the online environment, which eventually I feel everybody will have to, considering the present situations, how do you see the evolution and the adaptability, your own adaptability? Can you please tell
I'm
us?
not sure. I mean, we've had an online course, or I've had an online course for nearly 20 years.
Mhm.
I don't get many takers on it. I've often said that, some things you're not going to be able to completely teach online. It's like
Okay,
it's like learning karate or judo
okay, all right,
online. There's going to
okay.
come a time when you're going to have somebody in front of you to practice it on. And NLP is a bit like that. There are certain, yes, there's a quite a lot of it you can learn online, but you still need to actually do that practice. Now,
Mhm.
that could be done eventually. I don't see it quite at the moment, but it could be done eventually where you record your practice sessions with other people and then your teacher can look at them.
Yes.
But that, of course, at the moment is maybe a bit too formalized to do that.
Right.
You can certainly learn the theory online. It's the same way if I come back to surgeons. A surgeon can't learn surgery online. He can learn the theory, but
Yes,
he's
to
got to
practice it.
practice it
Yes.
on the body.
Yes.
So,
Right.
that's why some things are not going to be 100%. Things like mathematics and the three R's, as we used to call them when we were children, I forget what the three R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic were known as the three R's, and I
This
know
is
none of them are.
arithmetic. Yes.
Reading, writing, and arithmetic we used to call.
Yes.
Those sort of things you can learn online because they don't really require another person. So
Hmm.
I think there will be some subjects that you can learn fully online, but there are other subjects that you can only learn partly online. For example, in coaching, even though you go to a coaching course, a face-to-face course or an online course, you still have to end up giving a certificate that you've actually done a number of face-to-face transactions.
So, experiential learning matters so much in this field.
Absolutely. And very much so in NLP. NLP is always known as experiential learning.
Right.
But I think there can be a combination. Certainly, there is a certain amount that can be done online. The preparation
Hmm.
stuff can be done online. But you see, the other thing that comes in is the discipline.
Hmm.
Now, some people can be very disciplined and do things online on a regular hourly basis on a week or something like that. But then other people are not so disciplined.
Right.
And also, when it comes to learning, especially these alternative and complementary things, part of the learning is actually mixing with a group of like-minded people and
True.
chatting. There's more learning done in the aftermath of it, the après-learning, so to speak, than there actually is in the program.
Right.
And I think a lot of people go to these programs. I'm not talking about people that have to learn it for their job, but people that think, oh, that's a nice thing. Let me learn NLP, let me learn hypnosis, let me learn past life, and so on. It's because they want to do it, but they also want their companionship of other people that they can chat to. You know, this idea of medium of internet is good, but there is a whole area missing. You know, there's the feeling that's missing, the kinesthetic, the friendly batter one another with somebody else. You know, yes, you can ask questions, but you know, the asking a question, it's not necessarily the question that they ask, it's the way they ask it and the language they use to ask it.
In fact, one of the reasons why I decided to start doing this kind of a series was to develop a more interactive, informal environment in which we can interact and in which we can actually sit down and just have a conversation. Because, as you know, lockdown or no lockdown, the human element in the conversation is very important. I think all of us are missing that up to a certain extent. And looking at the situations which are going to happen, perhaps happen, this human interactivity element will get affected up to a certain extent.
I think so. But of course, you can do it. One way that might work better is by having little groups of people. Like, for example, if I had in this room 6 or 7 people and we wanted to learn together, then we could learn from the teacher and then we could immediately do it with each other. You know, that sense. And I think that's been shown to be very good nowadays. For example, I've seen lots of programs teaching yoga and keep fit exercises and so on. And I've seen that quite a lot of those are done with, you know, a few people in the household or the next door neighbour, or a few people come together and then they learn through the distant teacher. And that's not new, because you think about it, I mean, that's how most of the education in Australia started, by learning on television and telephone, remote learning. So I think there's a lot to be learned. And one of the things that this current situation is forced that a little bit to the front. And of course, yes, it is easier if you've got as a company, you want all your top executives to learn something. It's easy to do that on a 1-hour session once or twice a week with everybody tuning in to the same teacher, you know, the one to many. I think that has a good part to play in the future. But I don't think we need to go as far away as losing that common touch.
Let's just remain very hopeful about everything that is going to happen, and we'll scale up. I'm sure we'll scale up with the technology available and with our interest in scaling up and finding solutions. I think we will be in a position to find a lot of solutions. One thing that you just said was, it struck me a lot that this kind of a mastermind situation wherein we sit with a group and actually interact, this would be a very interesting thing to incorporate in the solutions that we are trying to bring out, and we'll definitely take care of this element. It's a very important input that you gave us.
There has to be a way that not everybody talks at once. You know, they push a T letter on their laptop to talk or something, you know, because otherwise everybody be fighting to get their words in. And that's what it'll end up like, what I jokingly call an Indian news program, where they have, you know, 6 people and they all try to talk at once, you know, and you're never quite sure.
Yes.
The camera doesn't go to the person who's talking, and that's pretty confusing. So that needs to be worked out so that not everybody talks at once. But that's just technology. But I think we've got to make sure that, you know, human beings are not robots, not yet anyway. And while we still have our soul and our beliefs, we're going to want to interact with other human beings. So that's something that a balance of that, I think, will work. Exactly how that balance happens.
I think there's a little bit of glitch. There was a little bit of glitch. Dr. David, we lost you for a moment there.
Yeah, I think it was somebody saying, "I agree."
Yes, the universe telling us it agrees.
So, you know, there are people that are going to love going online and learning, and there are people who are going to hate it, and there's going to be people in between, and there
Yes.
always has been. That's always been there. I mean, online
Absolutely.
has been there for
True.
years, but
True.
it
Dr.
needs a.
David, what exactly, what kind of advice would you give to the new trainers and coaches who are coming into the field, not just NLP, but generally speaking, because training and coaching industry is estimated to be a 2.5 billion dollar industry and scaling up. So, what advice would you have for the new people who are interested in wanting a piece of this big pie? A
Well,
big chunk of this pie, perhaps.
there was a very old saying that used to happen that said, teachers are not made, they're born. And I think the same thing happens with coaches. The very first thing, trainers, coaches, teachers have to have that desire, that want to do. You can't take somebody off the street and make them into a trainer. You can't do that. They've got to have that desire to do it. Now, there are several different types of trainers and teachers. There's trainers that just train anything. They don't even know the subject, but they'll just sit in front of people and follow the instructions given to them, a bit like robotic trainers. There'll always be need for those. You've got them. What are the sort of current programs that are floating around like that? There's this POSH, is it POSH program or something like sexual harassment at work or something? And then you've got this, campus to boardroom programs and all those sort of things, which are an extension of teaching. But then you have people that actually give information from their heart, their passion.
Right.
You may call them motivational speakers. You mentioned a couple of earlier people. All these people that have push the buttons in other people to want to do it, the desire to do it, the ability to make people really interested. And those are far and few between.
Hmm.
I always used to say, if you think back to your own school years as a schoolgirl, I bet you had a favorite subject at school. And when you think about that, I can almost bet you that your favorite teacher will be the teacher of that subject. Now, the question is the subject your favorite, or was it the ability of the teacher to make the subject interesting enough to be your favorite?
True. Very
And
true.
that's the real skill of a teacher or a trainer.
Right.
And, it is some of it you have naturally, and some of it you need to learn. And so I think, NLP teaches the things that other people have naturally, the ability to
Right.
do things.
Right.
And
Right.
if you
Right.
don't have it in you, if you don't have that sort of push inside you, it's very, you can't fake it. Just as
Yes.
the teachers in your school that were useless and the subjects they taught you never really understood, you
Right.
can't fake that. You've either got it in you or you haven't. And like everything else, if you've got it in you and it's part of you, you'll become very successful at it. Some of it you can teach. There are certainly techniques that you can teach, but the first thing has to be that desire. So, unfortunately, a lot of people in India go into the training business because they think they can make money out of it. Oh, it's easy to make money. You just have to stand tall. But it's not. It's not that easy. It is very much a vocation, like teaching is a vocation. And that has to come from your experience and from your heart.
Is
I mean,
there, what you're
I
saying is there are no shortcuts to this
no,
process
I
of
don't think
evolution. It's a long.
yeah, it's not only there's no shortcuts, but you've got to be that sort of personality. I put a video on some of our groups and some of our pages yesterday, which was a 13-year-old girl that is being taught practitioner and master practitioner, and all the comments that came back from it was how confident this person was, what phenomenal confidence this person had. But I know, because she's one of my relatives, that she never had that confidence before. So things like NLP, and NLP is not the only thing to give you confidence, but these sort of programs help give you that confidence. But you've got to have that natural ability. There's an old English proverb that says, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And unfortunately, there are a lot of sows around who want to be silk pursers, but there are only a few real silk pursers. So, taking that to a much higher level, not everybody in the world wants to be trainers. And if everybody in the world wanted to be trainers, who would they train? Because they don't be trainers. It's like sheep and shepherds, isn't it? If every sheep wants to be a shepherd, who would end up being the sheep? So I think sometimes you have to understand where you are in the whole way of life, and follow the passion that you have. So trainers, good trainers are good trainers that have had training to be trainers. Bad trainers are bad trainers that have had training to be trainers, but they'll still be bad trainers.
Right. So very true, Dr. David. And we are coming to the end of this session. I just want to thank you so much. It's been just lovely having you here, and we'll plan some more sessions of this sort in the later times. And thank you so much for being here, giving such beautiful nuggets of wisdom to all of us. And this recording is going to be staying there, and we are recording it, so it's you can utilize it
in the future. Somebody will say, "Oh, I saw that live." Okay, nice to speaking to you too. Wish you the luck in the future, and hopefully all your businesses will be fruitful for you.
Thank you so much, Dr. David, and I wish the same for you. Thank you again. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.